Yeah, people, it's showtime. Showtime. Let me know if you're here. I see three of you guys in the chat already. Yeah, Talia, you're here. Jody and Claire. That even rhymed. Yeah. So what's going on? How are you guys doing this morning? How's it going? How's it going? I just had dinner, so I'm good. I'm ready. I'm ready for the live. Have you guys had breakfast yet? How's it going? We're doing short story today. English A, CSEC English A, paper 2, short story. Lionheart, as usual, you're here. Yeah, big up yourself. Atalia Dawson, good morning to you. Yeah, young boy, Dea, never broke again. That is the vision. Yeah. Yeah, guys, you're up to 25. If you're here, say hi. Let me know you're here. So I know that I'm not talking to myself. We're doing short story today. Short story is what we'll be covering. 2 days ago, we tackled the summary. Yesterday, we tackled expository. That live lasted 5.5 hours. A pretty long live. My longest live yet. This live will not last that long. You will not draw me out. Yeah. 3 hours max for this live. Yeah, Zerb live again. Yeah. Tamara, Willy Wonka, what's that? Wanika Charles. Yeah, thanks for coming in. Blessed student, you're new. Well, you've missed a lot. Welcome. Mikai Ford, welcome to the story session. Keshalia, you're always here. Welcome. Short story is what we'll be doing today. Yeah. And if you are new, let me know where you're watching from. Let me see if a new country is going to appear on the radar. If you're new, let me know where you're watching from. We're going to start proper in about 5 minutes. Just giving the latecomers some time to reach. We still have a few seats in the back for those who are yet to arrive. Diona, good morning. Thanks for being here. Our best student is from Trinidad. All right, cool. Wanika Charles New from Guyana. Yeah. Oh, Jermaine from St. Vincent. Welcome to the live. We have a multinational stream. Yeah. We are all connected by the stress of CSEC. CSEC connects us all. Yeah. Yes, there was a great session. Well, thank you. It was definitely an experience. You just had to be there. Yeah. Joshua, good morning from Guyana, it seems. GY. Sage coming in from St. Lucia. Thanks for being here. Antonio Haywood from St. Vincent. Good to see you. Welcome to the CSEC English A Paper 2 Section C live. Longest title for a live you will ever hear. Gabby from Jamrock, from Jamaica, from my home. Welcome to the live. Yeah. We're starting proper in 2 minutes. Hopefully by then, all of the serious students will be here. We can get the ball rolling. By the way, we are going to be starting with the May 2018 past paper. So if you have access to that paper, whether you have access to the physical paper or the digital copy on your device, grab it. We're going to be looking at that paper today. Yeah, so we're looking at the, let me just type that in a comment. May 2018 past paper. Right? So that's what we are touching today. So grab your copy if you have one. If not, I'll be sharing the section C on the screen for most of the time, so you'll be able to view it there anyway. Today we're focusing on writing a perfect short story. Yeah, a perfect short story. That's what we're dealing with. Yeah. Who here is excellent at writing stories? Let me know in the chat. How would you rate your story writing skills from 0 to 10? Give yourself a rating from 0 to 10. What is your short story skill looking like? Ate, thanks for coming again. Claysha Ferron, Ashanti, Paula. Tamara says 8. Okay, that's a nice score. That's a grade 1 score. What is your short story rating out of 10? Jode, ooh, yaba, that's a little risky. 5. Best student, 6. Wanika, 8, not bad. Oh, negative 10. You sure you're gonna never be broke again? You're gonna be broke, man. Negative 10. Ooh, we need to fix that. We need to get rid of the minus sign. Yeah. Klesha, I need to see your story to prove that right. I need to check that out for myself. Kishalia 7, Antonio 6. Girl Paul, that's a nice score. 9. Paula 8. I tell you, like your answer, it depends on the prompt. So it ranges from decent to yikes. Kimisha, good morning. Let us know your story writing power out of 10. What's the story writing skill looking like? Ashanti is at 7. Vin A, good morning, good morning. Omar 3. Oh man, we have a lot of work to do. The question is, how would you rate your short story writing skills out of 10? How good are you at thinking of an idea, fleshing it out, planning it, getting it down on paper within 45 minutes? Vin A8, okay, that's good. Cobra, no, Cobra, we're gonna be here all night if you're a 1. Say it is at 7 when he says halfway there. Oh, Cobra, you've gone from a 1 to a 3 in like 10 seconds. Okay, by the end of the night, you'll be at 100. Ravina 6. That sounds grade 3-ish. Come on now. We have to get that up to a 9 or 10. Okay, Misha, you have a wide imagination. Hopefully, you also have a wide vocabulary. And hopefully, you're also fitting that imagination in a nice sentence structure. Yeah. Imagination is good, but you have to contain it on the paper. It depends on the scenario. Okay. Flat stories. Well, I'm gonna give you some pointers. Joshua says 7. Tanisha says 5. Tonya says 6. For those latecomers, we're checking your story writing score out of 10. How would you rate yourself? How good are you at writing a story? All right. I think the answers have stopped coming in. So why don't we get the ball rolling? It's 9 minutes past. So it's time to start. Those who come late will just have to play catch up. That's what happens when you're late. That's what happens when you're late. You got to play catch up. So we're looking at May, June 2018. CSEC English A, Paper 2. Good morning, Shelly. You were here yesterday. I remember your name. Thanks for being here again. So, by the way, the story I'll be sharing with you guys is one I have already written. So I'm showing a story that I already wrote, but I did write this story in a session within 40 to 45 minutes, under kind of exam style conditions. So the story I'm going to show you, it's not a story that you would need to write overnight. It's a story that I wrote in 40 minutes. So you can write something similar in 40 minutes. But I'm going to be showing you my thought process as I wrote this story. I'm going to go from planning to writing. Yeah, from thinking to planning to writing. All right, that's what we're doing today. We have 57 of us, so that's more than enough for us to get a good start. Okay, let's see. I'm going to share my screen here. Yeah, we got to get the ball rolling because it's going to be a long session. Hopefully not too long. Okay, here we go. Again, we're looking at May 2018. So please, if you have this paper somewhere else, if you have a physical copy, grab it. If you have an electronic copy, pull it up on your computer. All right. May, June 2018. So we're scrolling past section A. I did this summary, I think, yesterday in another session. Scrolling past summary. Looking at summary right now. We looked at summary 2 days ago. Scrolling past section B. Okay, this is where we are. Section C. So let's do a quick overview of section C and what they are looking for. First thing, suggested time 45 minutes. That's a lot of time that's more time than we get for the other sections. And that's because we're going to be writing a lot of words, basically 400 to 450 words. That's a longer piece of writing than we do anywhere else on the paper, right? 400 to 450 words. It says approximately, which means if you go a little under 400 or a little over 450, you should be fine. It says approximately 400 to 450. Of course, you want the aim to be in the middle, right? And it's better to be over than under. Better to have 480 words than 380 words. All right. Aside from this summary, it's better to go a little bit over than to go a little bit under the suggested word limit. So let's take a look at the instructions before we attempt any kind of planning or anything. You're going to write the answer on the pages provided there for answers. You are expected to write within the word limit. So they are expecting you to write 400 to 450 words. So try not to go over. If you go over a little bit, you might be fine. Try not to go under, especially try not to go under the word limit. You don't want CSEC thinking that you're unable to sustain, writing up to 400 words, right? There may be more space than you need. I find that there is just enough space. That's what I find. And there's going to be a blank page, and we are going to make notes. I'm going to show you how to plan your story and how to make the best of that blank space. If you leave that blank space blank, either you're a genius who doesn't need to plan and you already have everything done in your mind, or you just did not make full use of a 45 minutes, right? All right, so you must write in standard English. So your story, this is an English exam, your story will be in English. That should be obvious. They shouldn't need to state that. However, dialect may be used in conversation. So if you want to add in your local dialect, for me, if I want to add the Jamaican Creole, the patois, I can add that in conversation. Patois in conversation. But I cannot add the patois in the narration of the text. All right. So only if someone is speaking can I step out of English. That's the only time non-English text is allowed in the story. If someone is speaking, that's why they say conversation. Another word for conversation is a dialogue, which you're going to put in your quotation marks. All right. In your answer, you will be assessed based on how well you do 4 things. First, use the stimulus provided. So let's talk about the stimuli. On the exam, The trend is you're gonna have two options. You're gonna make a choice between a picture, write a story based on the picture below, and that's your stimulus. They're gonna judge you on how well you use it, or you can choose to use a piece of text. For example, this text here: they could feel the angry eyes piercing their backs, and then the door slammed. Blah blah blah. Write a story which includes these words. So these words can be at the beginning, middle, or end. Whichever prompt you choose, CSEC is going to grade you, is going to judge how well you use the stimulus. Now, what do we mean by how well you use the stimulus? It means if you choose the picture, actually, I'm going to show you a story I wrote based on this picture, right? If you choose the picture, there are some elements that must be included in a story. This guy must be in a story. You cannot write a story without this guy if you choose this picture, right? Obviously, you're gonna take this hint. It says amount due. So this story is gonna involve some man stressing over money. That has to be a part of the story. It has to be a central part of the story. It's not something you can just throw in at the end. Oh yeah, I forgot about the stimulus. Let me just write. And he was stressed about money. No, the story has to feature this as an important plot point, right? We see here that he is in an apartment. You can see a sink. The picture is quite shoddy. The pictures are usually blurry or vague, difficult to make out. That's how CSEC likes it. Perhaps the ambiguity in the pictures call for more imagination or more variations in what students might write. So he's in a house. We can see a sink behind him. We see what might be dishes or condiments. I don't know. That looks like a stove. And we see he's stressed. You can see that his hands are on his head, and there are lots of bills. Perhaps it looks like an opened envelope. And here we see amount due. So there are gonna be a number of uh, a number of elements that we must include if we choose this particular picture. And whatever picture you choose, they're gonna have aspects that you must include. So looking in the chat, we're seeing that uh, some of us are thinking. We're seeing different things that would have to include. Ate says, and also him possibly being married. Yeah, he has a wedding ring here. Nice observation. So adding that in the story would show CSEC that you're conscious of what the prompt is depicting, yeah, and you're observant. And so Ate is giving us even a plot angle we could take, marriage failing because of monetary challenges. So yeah, uh, the budgeting on ink, budgeting on ink. Oh, I mean CSEC. I think this is deliberate. I think it's deliberate. And yeah, he's in the kitchen. It seems, or maybe his apartment is so small that the kitchen is behind him and he's in the dining or living room, but it's such a cramped space. So we can interpret the image in various ways. The point is, CSEC is gonna grade how well you use this prompt in your picture. So you're not going to be writing a story about a story that takes place in a forest or some ancient fantastical world, right? Because that is not the setting here. The prompt is going to establish perhaps character, setting, uh, possible conflict, and stuff like that. So keep these things in mind when you choose a prompt. If you choose this here, they could feel the angry eyes. They immediately we know that this isn't a story with one character. There are multiple characters, right? They could feel the angry eyes piercing their backs, and then the door slammed. They made their way toward the waiting car. They were now on their own. So immediately we can think of some conflicts that might lead up to this particular statement. This sounds like it could be in the middle of the story, or it could be at the beginning, middle, or end. You could start with this near the beginning, and then you kind of do a flashback and you lead up to it, or you can have an exposition and then this happens and then the story is all about how they manage on their own, or this could be the result of people getting caught, people, getting caught doing something bad or whatever, falsely accused of a crime. Zero Live says. Oh, this might be for the previous prompt. Yeah. Anyway, we won't go too deeply into the prompt. The point is, you have to use the stimulus well, and you can't just, you know, leave it as an afterthought after you've written a story, right? You thought the live was at 8? No, we start at 7 Jamaica time. 7 Jamaica time. Yeah. All right. The second thing CSEC is going to be judging you on is how you would develop and organize the content of your writing. What do you mean by this? This is a story we're writing, and whatever piece of writing you're undertaking, whether it's section A, section B, section C, or section D, there's going to be organization and development to consider, right? Development in terms of a story, we're talking about how the plot unfolds, how one event logically leads to the next. And your paragraph development is going to be pushing the plot development, right? Organization, things must be um, written in a logical way, must be organized properly so that a reader can follow a story and understand what's happening. I'm going to explain and demonstrate as I go. Right. Point C here: use language appropriate to your audience, purpose, and content. So basically, your language style should match not just the story, but the academic level at which you're writing, which is you know, a pre-university level. You're finishing up high school, so you shouldn't sound like you're writing a children's story, a basic school story. Even if the story itself has a simple plot, your language should appropriately fit both the story and the level of writing that you're undertaking, which is a CSEC level kind of writing. And we're gonna perhaps get a little bit more into audience and purpose as we go on. And D, use appropriate grammar. Yeah, we see this for every section, right? Your grammar should be on point. You shouldn't be making silly mistakes at this point. You're probably in fourth or fifth form, most of you. So your grammar should be on point. They're expecting perfect grammar or near perfect grammar. Your sentence structures. Now, in a story, it's not just about correct sentence structures. It's also about varied and interesting sentence structures. So it means not all our sentences will look the same. Not all of them will be the same length. Not all of them will have the same structure and type of wording. You're going to have to vary it because you're writing a story. So you reach some action scenes and you want to drop some fast-paced action. You use short, quick, potent sentences. You're moving into description and you want to slow down the pace. You use longer sentences, perhaps with different types of vocabulary. So you are controlling the pacing and the mood of a story with the sentence structure and the diction, right? Paragraphs, of course, you're writing in continuous prose. Your paragraphs should make sense. Each paragraph deals with a new scene or a main idea, right, in your story. And of course, the vocabulary should be at CSEC level. So you should be throwing in some of the more advanced, some of the fancier language as you write at this level. Spelling and punctuation, that's self-explanatory. As for punctuation, story writing is where a lot of students lose marks for punctuation because how you punctuate is a little bit, it's a bit unique to the genre. And I'm going to show you how to punctuate a story properly. All right, so that's what CSEC is looking for. So we're going to tackle this one. What I'll do is I'm going to write a story that I already have. It's a story that I wrote within 40 minutes. So I'm not showing you something that you can't replicate. I'm not showing you an impossible task. But I'm going to write it again in real time now, and I'm going to explain my thought process. And then there's another paper that I want us to touch on. For that one, we'll kind of either we'll craft this story together, or I'll check your ideas for a story and then show you mine. But when we get there, we deal with that. So we're looking at question 3, right? Write a short story based on the picture below. So I am choosing 3, but in the exam, you will have to decide what prompt you want to use. And how are you going to decide? Whichever prompt seems easier to you, more familiar, whichever prompt gets the ideas flowing, whichever prompt is least confusing. So let's say you have no idea what the word piercing means, right? Perhaps choosing this prompt is out of the question, because if you misunderstand one word in a prompt, it can throw off your entire story. So you might be forced to choose the picture. Yeah. Some students do better with pictures than the text prompt, and vice versa. Practice lots of story questions. Figure out what kinds of prompts you're generally better at. Anyway, what do we do? What is the first thing we do? First thing we do when we reach section C, we we read the instructions. Obviously, we're going to read the instructions and ensure that we know what is expected of us. We're keeping track of our time. We know how many words we need to be writing. We know what CSEC requires of us. Then we choose a prompt. If you're really stuck between 2 prompts and you just can't decide, it's 50-50, then super quickly, in no more than 3 minutes, just jot down ideas for both prompts. And whichever prompt gives you better ideas, work with that one. Don't spend 10 minutes trying to choose a prompt. That's a waste of time. All right, so I'm using this prompt. Write a story based on the picture below. I like the picture prompts. They're much more open. And the picture prompts allow you to go into the exam, perhaps with a couple of stories in mind, and you kind of tweak one of those stories to fit the picture. That's an idea. So what's the first thing I do after choosing a prompt? After choosing a prompt, I'm going to spend a lot of time. I won't tell you how much time to spend, but I spend about 15 minutes planning my story. But I'm going to show you how I mark up this page here. Right? I'm going to show you how I mark up this page. I draw this big, it's like a T. Right? This is how I mark up my planning page. Remember, I get this page to plan on, and CSEC will not be marking this. This is just to help you. And what I do here at the top, I write down the 3 stages of my story writing journey at the top. First step, plan. And I write here in the brackets 15 minutes. So I know that, okay, I'm going to plan for 15 minutes. On the plan, I'm going to change the color, but in the exam, you just do everything in one color. But I want you guys to clearly see what I'm writing. On the plan, so this is like the first block here. On the plan, I have 4 C's. You guys are confused. You have no idea what 4 C's means, but I'm going to get into it. And then plot outline. So what this little box means, remember, we're planning before we start writing, before we even start thinking. We're writing down what the plan is. We do the same thing for summary. We did something similar for expository writing. So if you missed those sessions, you might be a bit confused on the approach we're taking, but try to keep up. So this little box right here is saying, I'm going to plan for 15 minutes. And this plan consists of figuring out 2 things. I need the 4 C's. When I get the 4 C's down, I will check this box. I need a plot outline. When I get the plot outline done, I'll check this box. Both of these boxes should take me about 15 minutes to check. Then the next part of my journey is write. I'm going to write my story in about 25 minutes. You might say, man, how can you write a story in 25 minutes? Because you have already planned it out. Yeah. Take your time, sir, dropping off on the children. Oh, you're dropping off kids. All right, I'll be here running the live. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. All right, so you're right in 25 minutes, and I'm gonna have here ADD add. You guys are wondering what the heck? What are we adding? I thought this was English. Why am I seeing math terminologies? I'm gonna explain what add is. But for my writing section, I need to focus on ADD. The last part of the plan here is the last part of the story writing journey is the review, which is going to take me about 5 minutes. And on the review, I won't write anything here, but it can write things like check spelling, word code. Let me write a few things. Some of you might have no idea. So things I can write under the review, you're gonna check your spelling, you're gonna check your punctuation, you're gonna check things like your word count, and you're gonna check to ensure that the stimulus is properly represented. Of course, you can always find more things to add to your review section. You only have 5 minutes, so you can't do a whole lot. So the first thing I do in the exam, I choose the prompt I want to work, the prompt or the stimulus I want to work with. The second thing I do, I drop this big kind of table looking thing, this big T, and I write plan, 4C's, plot outline, write, ADD, review, blah, blah, blah. Now it's time to start planning. What are the things we need to accomplish in the plan? Of course, we said 4C's, or a capitalization, that could be another thing that you add here. Capitalization. You can check your tense, ensure that you're sticking in the past tense. If you're writing in past tense, you should write in past tense. That's my advice. Check your grammar, just all of the different review checks that I can think of. Do it in 5 minutes. Okay, so the rest of this space now, this big T right here, this is all my planning section. So the 4C's and the plot outline, we're going to put these under here. This looks complicated now, I know, but you only need to do it once to get the hang of it. And then you'll be able to do all of this in just a few minutes. So 4C's, let me change the color again. I want this thing to be clear because if you get the plan right, the story is going to be easy to write. Over here, I have 4C's. And over here, you guessed it, plot outline. Because my planning has two sections to it. I'm going to look at the 4C's. I'm going to look at the plot outline. Now, what are the 4C's? We finally get to the mystery, guys. The 4C's. C1 is character or characters. Right? I need to figure out who the character of my story is, who the main character is, or who the main characters are. I need to figure out what my conflict is going to be. So this is me brainstorming ideas for a story. I'm not just going to randomly throw down some thoughts on the paper. I need to get some structure in place. So when I start writing, I don't even have to think anymore. I can just go. I need to figure out who my characters are. I need to figure out what their conflict is like. What is my character's problem? If there's no conflict, there's no story. Right? I need to figure out some kind of change that happens to my characters. So if you have a story and you have characters, something has to happen to them, right? In the end, does somebody die? Does somebody learn a lesson? Does somebody get rich? Does somebody fall into depression? Does somebody have a change of heart? Does somebody give their life to Jesus? What happens to your character? There has to be a major change, right? Or there should be some change, however major you want to make it. And finally, context. Context, you might know this as setting. When and where does a story happen? And kind of why does the story happen? Oh, I was trying to figure out my four C's. Conclusion. Well, I don't have a conclusion because I saved that for the essay writing section. I mean, the ending paragraph is kind of a conclusion, I guess, but since it's a story, we can call it a resolution. Anyway, I need the four C's. So before I start thinking about what the four C's are, I'm going to go over to plot outline and write down the three elements of the plot outline. Now, some of my teachers might teach you about exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, what they call that thing, resolution. However, you only have 45 minutes to write this story. So your story doesn't need to be overly complicated in terms of plot structure. I think you only need 3 parts of the story. 3 parts. Can anybody tell me in the chat what those 3 parts are? It's as basic as it gets. Your story needs 3 sections in terms of plot. Let me know what you think those 3 sections are. Let me know. And then I'm going to give you the answer. This is just my workflow. Other teachers might have different ideas. For me, my story needs 3 sections. Rizana has it. Check the chat for what Rizana is saying. Yeah. Beginning, middle, end. That's what you need. Your story needs a beginning, a middle. Maybe we put middle up here because beginning isn't going to take too much time. And it needs an end. Right? So this is kind of the same idea of exposition, climax, resolution. But I use beginning, middle, end because I want to make it even simpler than that. I want to make it as simple as possible, right? As simple as possible. And so I say my story has to start somewhere. It has to reach somewhere, end up somewhere, and then it has to, stop somewhere. So it starts somewhere, something happens in the middle, and it eventually ends. Now, we don't need to overthink it, right? If you want to be a novelist and you want to write a novel, you want to write a 700-page book, then you can start overthinking. For CSEC, we're not going to overthink it. You need a beginning, a middle, and an end. That's it. All right? A beginning, a middle, and an end. So I'm going to tell you what you need for your beginning, what you need for your middle, what you need for the end. Because there are things you need to do in each section. Right? In the beginning of your story, you need to introduce the character. Let me write this down. So in the beginning, I want to write this somewhere else because I'm not going to use this space for that. In the beginning, B is for beginning. Right? In the beginning of a story, you have to introduce the characters. Introduce your characters. You also have to introduce the setting or the context. So in the first paragraph or so of a story, we should know who the story is about and where this person is or where these people are. And you can probably introduce the conflict. Probably. Conflict. Maybe introduce the conflict. What about the middle of a story? What's going to happen in the middle? You're going to build tension. So suspense, tension, the problem is building, and then eventually it can start exploring the conflict. Remember, there has to be a conflict. There has to be a problem that your protagonist must solve or overcome. And in the middle of the story, you also have to develop your character, right? And this is where you're gonna have like your climax, the big moments. All of this happens in the middle of the story. Now, at the end of the story, what do you need to do? You need to resolve the conflict. Whatever the problem is, bring it to a close, bring it to an end. Do not try the cliffhanger to be continued style, right? There's no continuation unless you fail your exam and you continue it the next year, and you're going to fail again if you do that. So, no to be continued. Bring the story to a close by solving the problem. It doesn't mean the solution has to be a favorable or a happy one. The ending can be sad, but there has to be some ending. Also, you need to show how your character changes. Show how your character changes. So when I say beginning, middle, end, this is what I mean. In the beginning of a story, you introduce a character so we know who the story is about. You also introduce the setting or the context of the story. And you may introduce the conflict if you want to jump right into it. In the middle of the story, you build tension. So through action and dialogue, you're having the problem, boiling up, reaching a boiling point, and then you throw in the climax, the main event, the hyper action in the story. You throw that in, and by the end, this is where you resolve it. Whoever needs to die dies. Whoever needs to win money win money. Whoever needs to get the girl or get the man, get the girl or get the man. Whoever needs to get revenge, get revenge. The problem that you started out with, that problem should have some kind of, I don't like the word solution because you don't have to solve the problem, but you have to give it some kind of closure, whether it's negative or positive. All right. Your main character can even die. So it doesn't have to be a happy ending, but it has to be an ending. So that's what I mean by beginning, middle, end. So back to the plan now. Stick with me. I am stretching out a process that is gonna take you a few minutes into like 1 hour. So I explain what the process is. You enter the exam, the first thing you do, read your instructions, and then choose your question. Question 3 or question 4. In this case, I am going with question 3. After that, you draw up this table, you write plan, 15 minutes, 4 C's, plot outline. I'm gonna write all of this up. Write 25 minutes, ADD. Review, 5 minutes, and all of your review checklist goes here. Now, the planning stage is where we are, and so we're doing the planning here. Don't be confused. We're not writing, we're not reviewing. Right now, we're planning. In order to plan the story properly and completely, we're going to plan out the 4 C's: my character, my conflict, my change, my context. And we're going to plan out the plot outline, the beginning, the middle, and the end. After we finish this planning stage, we can easily write a story in 25 minutes. Hopefully, we're following the workflow. All right. So I'm going to share with you the plan that I have for this story. Again, I have pre-written my story. This is a story that I did do in 40 to 45 minutes. So you're looking at this picture here. And I brainstormed. I said, okay, I need to give this character a name, and I need to basically have an idea of who he is. And so this is what I write for my character plan. Marlon, a young man who is struggling financially. Okay, yeah, Marlon. A young man who is struggling financially. That is who this is. Next point. He has a job, but he's struggling to pay his bills. And maybe I can write an age, if it's relevant, age 30. Yeah, that's about my age. So this is what I have for my character. As you guessed, this is Marlon right here. This guy. So in my planning, I figured out, okay, I'm going to write a story about this guy. Now, the question I need to ask myself for the next step is, what is Marlon's problem? We know that the general problem is that, there's some money issue, but I need a specific problem that the story is going to center around. So I thought about different problems, different monetary problems. Maybe he needs to pay the mortgage and he has to find a way to pay it. Maybe he has gotten into some criminal activities in order to pay his rent. What am I going to do? So you're going to brainstorm a little bit, think about a conflict for your story. This is what I came up with. Marlon needs money urgently. Yeah. His landlord is about to evict him, kick him out of the house if he cannot pay his rent very soon. It's a simple conflict, simple problem, nothing complicated. So I have my character, I know who he is, and I know what his problem is. Now I need to think about the change. What is gonna be some kind of change that Marlon experiences? What's gonna be kind of here we can even think about a resolution to the problem or how Marlon is gonna change by the end of the story. So this is what I came up with for change. I'm gonna change his financial situation. Marlon helps the landlord's mother and his rent is forgiven. So he helps the landlord's mother. He doesn't have to pay his rent anymore. He is given a new job by the woman. He is no longer stressed. All right, so I've worked out what change Marlon is going to experience. Right, what change he's going to experience. Okay, context. This is easy. Just looking at the picture. Most of the story is going to take place in Marlon's house, maybe, or maybe we can go to some nearby streets, or I can say urban. So it's happening like in a city or in a town, not in a forest or something like that. So I figured out who my character is, what his problem is, what kind of change he's going to experience, and I've put the story in a particular place. All right, that's my 4 C's: character, conflict, change, context. 4 C's done. All right, now let's go to plot outline. Plot outline. This is where we're going to do some more big thinking. We're going to think about how the story is going to flow. We're going to keep all of these things in mind, right? We already know what the conflict and change is. We know who the character is. So now we're going to, if your screen is blurry, turn up the resolution. I'm streaming at full HD 1080p. So click the little gear icon, and select 1080. Select the highest number you see. All right. So for plot outline, beginning, this is what I came up with. Marlon is in his apartment stressing about money. Yeah, Marlon is in his apartment stressing about money. And if you're observant enough, you will see that that's the beginning of my story is going to be what the prompt is all about here. The stimulus is going to be the beginning of my story. What's going to happen in the middle of my story? So I'm going to use bullet points because I want a few things to happen in the beginning of the story. I'm planning out the story now. So the landlord threatens to evict him and punches him in the face. Landlord threatens to evict him and punches him in the face. That's the first thing I want to happen like in the middle of my story. Then Marlon is late for work, further jeopardizing his financial situation. So what I'm doing here, I'm going to be building tension because this man is broken and needs to pay his rent. And because of the punch in the face, now he's late for work, probably going to lose his job, and the situation is going to get even worse. What do I want to happen next? He helps an old lady in the street. That's what I want to happen next. All right. What about the end? The ending of my story. The old lady that he helps is the landlord's mom. So Marlon didn't realize, but the lady just helped in the street is the landlord's mother. She forgives his rent and gives him a good job. So he helps this woman on the way to work already late, and she says, "Oh, guess what? I'm gonna make sure you never pay any rent in your life, and I'm gonna give you a job." That's how my story is gonna end. Now, this planning section should take you about 15 minutes. Remember that, 15 minutes. So in 15 minutes, you're gonna write about your character, determine what conflict you want the character to face, write about the change you want the character to undergo, think about where and when the story is happening. Then you're going to outline the plot. What do you want to happen in the beginning? What do you want to happen in the middle? What do you want to happen in the end? All right. My plan is done. I'm going to move on to the writing section. Before I move on, any questions about how to plan your story? I'll give you 2 minutes to come up with questions. Any questions on how to plan your story? This is how I plan it. Every CSEC story I write, this is how I plan it out. And I can write the story in 40 minutes easily. Yeah, you write until you feel like stopping. Well, guess what? If you have a plan, then you're gonna you're gonna stop when you need to stop because you're gonna stop when the story ends. That's how we plan. We plan so that we can contain and control the writing process. The more detailed a plan is, the easier it is to write and stay on track and stay within the word count. Because if you have no plan, your story never ends. You just continue writing, things keep happening, the character keeps making different decisions, people keep dying, people keep popping up because there's no plan. You don't know where you're going. With a plan in mind, you can get the story done in a couple of paragraphs within a 25-minute span of writing. Yeah, and if you plan a story, it will not be confusing because you know what events are going to happen step by step. Yeah. Well, I'm not including that in my story. It's an option to include it because of a ring here. Maybe he's wearing a ring for style. I don't know. Maybe he's divorced, but that's not going to be important to my story. It can be important to your story though. How close to explicit? Don't overdo it is what I would say. Just don't overdo it. Remember that you're writing at an academic level and you are being graded by teachers, right? You're writing at an academic level. You're not writing for your friends, so don't overdo it with the explicit stuff and stuff like that. Just keep it. You don't have to keep it very clean, but don't write the kind of story that you would be nervous reading in front of the class. Yeah. Is it better to write in first person or third person? I think it's easier to write in third person, but that's just a personal experience. You may write in first person, but I think developing multiple characters is easier done, or even developing one character is easier done in third person because you're not limited in terms of the narration. With first person, especially first person limited, you're only narrating from your point of view or from that character's point of view. And so it's difficult to comment on things outside of that. So it might make the story, especially if you have multiple characters in different locations, it might be difficult to write in first person. Yeah. So no questions about the planning process, about the 4 C's and the plot outline? I thought there would be a few questions about this. I'll give you one more minute to think of a question. $83 viewers and not one question, man. You guys know it all. Or maybe I'm just very clear in my explanation. No questions? Are you sure? I'm moving on. I'm not going back. So let me know. Let me know if the plan is clear. You get mixed up with report and short story, but they're completely different, Ravina. You're creating the short story. The report, you're just reporting on facts that CSEC gives you. We should only include what we see in the image. Well, it won't be only what you see in the image, but the image must be in the story. Of course, my entire story is not going to be just this man looking down at the papers, right? Something else is going to happen in different places, perhaps. But this image needs to be important to the story. Does it have to be about the sentence or included? The sentence has to be important to the plot. It shouldn't just come in randomly. It has to come in naturally and it has to connect to everything else. Because CSEC is marking you on how well you use the prompt. So you can't just throw it in randomly. I'm gonna touch on this when I get to the writing process now. So don't worry. You can replicate it at a. It's very easy to replicate. You just need to remember two things: the 4 C's, beginning, middle, end. That's all you need for the plan. 4 C's. Your character needs to have a character. That character needs to have a conflict. The character needs to have a change, and the story must happen somewhere. So there's a context. Write down the 4 C's for the story, and then write down the plot outline. What's gonna happen in the beginning of the story? What's gonna happen in the middle? What's gonna happen at the end? So when you're writing the story, you can look at the 4 C's and the plot outline and just write smoothly. You don't have to be making up things as you go along because you already have the story written down in the plan. So it's easy to replicate, I'd say. Very easy. And you're saying you don't know how to start. You guys aren't getting the plan. The plan is gonna tell you how to start. So I know how to start my story. I won't have to spend 10 minutes wondering how to start because I've already planned the beginning. I'm just gonna start with this man stressing about money. That's it. You just follow the plan. Make the plan, you follow it. It's as simple as that. Yeah. 4 C's plot outline. That's it. All right. Are we good with the planning? You're gonna spend 15 minutes doing all of this markup. Can you do it in 15 minutes? I'm gonna answer that. Yes, we can do it in 15 minutes. Because I can do it in 15 minutes. If I can do it, you can do it too. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Are we okay? Do you have to start the introduction with a hook? Well, I'm not sure if we call it a hook in story writing, but you want to start the story in an interesting way. So no once upon a time or it was a dark and stormy night, right? You start the story with an interesting piece of action, a piece of dialogue, or a very interesting piece of description. Yeah. You like this plan a lot? Yeah, it's a simple plan, but it's an effective plan. Yeah, you begin with action, dialogue, or description. Just make sure that you are following the plan that you have. All right, we seem to understand the plan, so we're going to go on to the writing process. So the writing process will take us about 25 minutes, which might sound short, but we already spend 15 minutes planning, so we can write in 25 minutes. You can start with a flashback. You can. Uh, it's an advanced technique. So if you're already struggling to write a story, don't bother with the fancy devices. But if you're an advanced writer, then you can throw in flashback and all those things. No, Nessa, you're not getting it. Nessa, the plan is gonna take the pressure off you. So it's going to take the brainstorming pressure off you because guess what? When you write down 4 C's, conflict, when you write down character, conflict, change, context, it's easier to plan because you're going to think of one thing at a time. So imagine you're going to the exam with no planning format. You see a picture, now you're thinking, okay, who is it going to be? What happens? Who is this girl? What is this ring? What are these things on the table? You have no sense of direction. You're just panicking. But if you're going there and you write down the 4 C's, characters, okay, let me think of a person. What person can I write about right now? You check the picture or you check the word prompt, you figure out a person and write that down. Bam. Okay, conflict. What problem could this person have? You think of a couple of conflicts, you choose the most exciting one, bam. Change. How is this person going to change? You write that down, bam. Context. Where's the story? Bam. 4 C's done. Based on the 4 C's, okay, what's going to happen in the beginning? You write one line, done. What's going to happen in the middle? You write a few lines, done. What's going to happen at the end? You write one line, done. Easy plan. The plan takes away the pressure. If you enter CSEC with no planning structure, that is where the pressure is going to hit. Yeah, that's where the pressure is going to hit. So the plan outline will make the break. It's going to make the page messier, but it's going to make the thinking much easier. I'm going to get to writing dialogue, Haley. All right, let's go to the writing section. And let me bring up Kwama's comment in the meantime, because this comment is very fitting for what I'm about to say. The writing section is ADD. Let me take the comment off because it's a hint. Nobody look at that comment right now. ADD. What do you think ADD means? Is it just about adding numbers? I'm going to write a math story. What is ADD? We could even say DAD, dad. Whichever one is easier to remember. ADD, DDA, DAD. What do you think these letters stand for? And they have to do with writing a story. I'll give you 2 minutes to guess. That's it, Sir Live. After you plan, you pretty much have the story. It's just about organizing it into the paragraphs. That is it, Monica. Action, dialogue, description. So you're going to remind yourself in the exam, you need 3 sentence types. Your story should have a good mix of action, dialogue, and description. So while you're writing, ensure that you have a good balance. Not just description, nobody talking, nothing happening. You need a good balance. A good story has a good mix of action, dialogue, and description, the 3 sentence types. What is action? Something is happening. A fight is happening, a shootout, a car chase. What is dialogue? People are talking. Someone is thinking. Conversation is happening. What is description? Use of imagery. You're describing the scene, the setting. You're describing emotion. You're describing a character. You're describing even an action. Now, does it mean I need to write action sentence, dialogue sentence, descriptive sentence? Guess what? If you're an advanced writer, you can have 1 sentence that have all 3 or 2 out of the 3. You can have a sentence that have action and dialogue. While people are talking, they're fighting. That's fine. You can have description while action is happening. You're vividly describing the action. However you want to mix and twist it, your story must have a good mix of action, dialogue, and description. Right? If any one of these is lacking, your story is not balanced and it's not going to feel complete. If you read a whole story and nobody says a word in the whole story, no dialogue, is it really a story? Not according to CSEC. Right? If you write a whole story and there's no action, it's a boring story. If there's no description, then the reader cannot visualize anything, cannot relate to anything. All right? So that's why we have ADD here. We already know what we're going to do for review. We discussed that earlier. So now I'm going to use this plan that I have and write a story. As I've said before, I've already written my story under exam conditions. So I'm going to just rewrite what I already have and go through the thought process. All right? I'm going to go through the thought process. So I'm writing what I already have. And I think this is a good story. Oh, Rafiana, you're just coming in. Good morning. All right. We indent to begin because they're writing in continuous prose, right? The stained wooden chair creaked beneath Marlon as he sank into it. That's my opening line. What type of sentence is this? I want to see if you can understand my thought process in writing this story. Because every line must count. Every word must count. What type of sentence is this? The stained wooden chair creaked beneath Marlon as he sank into it. Those are a story need a title. You can title your story. I usually title mine. I'm not writing a title this time. But you can title a story after you've written it. After writing it, you can come up with a title easily. Yeah, it's a descriptive sentence, right? Descriptive sentence. The stained wooden chair. Look at the use of description. As I go through, I'll highlight a couple of words and techniques. So you're not just looking at my story, but you're looking at the thought process behind the story, right? So look at this. Stained wooden chair. Instead of just saying the chair, Marlon sat down. That's a boring piece of action. This sentence is action and description. Marlon sank into the chair. That's a piece of action. It's a more interesting way of saying of saying he sat down. And what I'm doing, I'm building out the beginning of my story because I'm looking at the prompt and I'm working the prompt into my story intro. A taste is full of imagery, right? So we see creaked. The chair creaked. What does that bring to mind? It means, man, this chair must be old. It is stained. What does that bring to mind? It means, man, this chair must be old. Marlon must be poor. And I have, in the very first sentence, I have introduced my character, at least his name. Yeah. And as Jody is saying, you can actually get a sense of tone and mood. What kind of mood do you have, even with just this one line? What kind of mood are you getting? The stained wooden chair creaked beneath Marlon as he sank into it. What is the mood that you're getting? What is the mood? Remember, while you're writing a story, you're using action, dialogue, description to set the mood, set the tone. You are in control of the story. The story is not controlling you. You are controlling what emotions your reader should be feeling. Distress, yeah, signifies that he's poor, ominous. So this is what you want to do with a story. Even from the beginning, you want to get the reader's mindset where you want it to be. If you want them to be at the edge of their seats, wondering, wow, what is happening? What kind of police chase is happening right now? Or if you want them to feel a despondent sense, like, oh man, I'm sorry for this guy. So you are the one controlling the emotion, right? Every sentence has to have some kind of motive behind it in terms of what you want the reader to feel or experience. So that's my opening sentence. The stained wooden chair creaked beneath Marlon as he sank into it. All right. He oozed out. He oozed out a lifeless sigh. And then another. Building on that despondent mood, right? Building on that that tone that, oh man, this isn't looking good. He oozed out a lifeless sigh. Look at the use of interesting vocabulary. Oozed. What is the meaning of ooze? To release or secrete slowly. So it's almost like he's a plant just dying and secreting its last juices or something gross like that, right? I didn't say Marlon sighed. He sighed. He was stressed. What I want to do is I want to show how stressed he is through his actions. So he oozed out what kind of sigh? A lifeless sigh. What does that mean? It doesn't mean he's literally dead. It means he's feeling, depressed. He has some serious problems. And then another. So he sighs 2 times. And this is the picture I'm trying to create. I'm trying to create this picture in the reader's mind. Someone sitting on a chair. The chair is creaking because it's old, because he's poor, because the apartment is old, and all of these things. He's sighing, he's stressed out. That is what I'm trying to depict here. I'm using up my descriptive sentences. I'm using bits of action. I haven't used any dialogue yet, but we'll get to dialogue shortly. All right. The bills. Oh, this shouldn't be green. The bills and notices. Continuing to paint the picture. And you can start with action, dialogue, or description. I'm starting with a bit of description here. The bills and notices had outgrown their station on the table and were now littered about the cramped apartment. Yeah. So this is kind of my exposition. The exposition is almost done. The beginning is almost done. All right. He oozed out a lifeless sigh, and then another. The bills and oh, this should be notices, not noticed. The bills and notices had outgrown their station at the table, on the table, and were now littered about the cramped apartment. So I'm describing I'm setting up the context on more cramped apartment, right? So it's a small space, it's a confined space. Probably Marlon is not doing very well financially. He's probably stressed out, right? Cramped apartment. And we see littered about. So there are many bills. So without saying, this young man sat down in his kitchen worrying about money. I don't want to spell it out like that as if I'm in basic school. I need to show the stress. I need to allow the reader to visualize what's happening and see all of the bills and just imagine you're floating in the sea of unpaid bills, right? And notice the use of figurative language. I can throw that in. If you want a grade one, you have to write at a grade one level. The bills and notices had outgrown their station, using some personification as if the bills are multiplying and they're taking over the place. It's like the bills are fighting him. And Ate has the right image. In a sea of bills, Marlon was drowning, barely managing to keep his bed above the ruthless, overwhelming tides. Yes, that could definitely work. That's a much more interesting way to say Marlon was worrying about money and stressing about bills. So you have to paint the picture, and as Ray Ray is saying, allow the reader to see. There's a thing we say in literature teachers say this all the time: show, don't tell. Yeah? Show, don't tell. So instead of saying the man was hungry, tell us his insides curled with emptiness. Instead of saying the sun was hot, the dry stones cried out for mercy under the dreadful heat. So you have to find ways to not just make things too obvious and spoon feed the reader, but use up your description, your imagery, your figurative language to write interesting sentences and get the reader invested into the story. All right. So back to the writing. I'm gonna take a long time to write my story because I wanted to see where my head is, and I wanted to see the intention behind each sentence. So when you're writing your story, I can remember some of these tips and tricks and techniques. Right? His fingers, just by reflex, sifted through the letters and envelopes as he loosened his red tie roughly. Yeah? His fingers, just by reflex, sifted through the letters and envelopes as he loosened his red tie roughly. So, what am I suggesting in this story? It's good to suggest things. It's better to suggest than to explicitly say. Allow the reader's imagination to work with the information you're giving, right? Allow the reader to see and to journey with the story rather than saying, okay, this happened, that happened, this is how this person was feeling. Because that's a boring story. And the marker is going to fall asleep. Right? So, what do you think I'm suggesting with this last sentence here? His fingers just by reflex. Why did I mention by reflex? Why would I put that into it? What is my intention? His fingers by reflex. Yeah, a big vocabulary is going to help. Vocabulary is going to help a lot. Yeah. Why would I talk about reflex, guys? I want to see if you're able to analyze a story. Why would I mention reflex? If you're able to understand why I write this, then maybe you will be able to write something similar in the exam. He has been broke for a long time. Yeah, he has done this before without thought. He doesn't need to think. This is just like every month, it's the same thing. Every day, every week, every year. So without saying, Marlon has always been broke. He's used to doing this. This is not new for him. That's boring. What you should do is show us how used to it he is. Show, don't tell. Show, don't tell. So add that by reflex. He can do this with his eyes closed because he has been stressed for a long time. So I'm building up all of these elements of Marlon's life with just a few sentences without spending 5 paragraphs talking about the history of how broke he has been for 10 years. All right. So that's why I write a story economically, meaning you're using words wisely and you're getting a lot done with a few words. Right? He sifted through the letters and envelopes. See, I'm using some nice vocabulary. Reflex sifted through the letters and envelopes as he loosened his red tie roughly. Why did I say he loosened his tie roughly? Why would somebody want to loosen their tie roughly? Are they crazy? Why? Why loosen your tie in a rough way? What am I indicating? Guys, work with me in the chat. Let's run through this. He's frustrated. He's angry. So you see, instead of saying Marlon was angry, Marlon was frustrated, you give us an action that shows that frustration, that shows the stress and the depression. All right. So this is so when I say use action, dialogue, description, don't just use them willy nilly for no reason. You have a purpose for every line. Right. So now that you have a story planned already, it's easier to get into finding interesting ways to express because you're not thinking about, okay, what's happening next. You know what's happening because you've planned. So now you can spend the time figuring out what vocabulary you want to use, how you want to show a certain emotion, evoke a certain feeling, stuff like that. Right. And I'm also indicating without saying it explicitly that Marlon just came home from work. Come home from work, taking off your tie, stressing over bills. This is the situation that I talked about in my plan. Marlon, look at characters here. I'm following the plan, guys. I am not deviating. Marlon, a young man who is struggling financially. He's struggling to pay his bills. Beginning, Marlon is in his apartment stressing about money. So I can come here and write some beautiful lines because the plan is set. Yeah? Guys, this is easy. My opening is done. The beginning is done. I need to get into what happens in the middle now. Landlord threatens to evict him and punches him in the face. That's where I am in my story. I'm going to indent because it's a new paragraph. I'm not going to skip a line. That's a big indent. Oh my gosh. This may as well be a noose around my neck. This may as well be a noose around my neck. He said under his breath. And tossed his tie behind him. All right? What are you getting from this sentence? This may as well be a noose around my neck. What is a noose? I'm telling you, your vocabulary better be able to handle these words. What's a noose? Do you know what a noose is? Let me know in the chat if you know what a noose is. Oh, there we go. There we go. Ate says he's suicidal. A loop at the end of a rope that tightens. So this man is taking off his tie and saying, my gosh, this might as well be a rope. That is how depressed he is. He's in a state where he's looking at his work tie and it's like his job is killing him off. He wants to die without saying, Marlon felt like he wanted to kill himself that day. No, I'm not in grade 6, right? So you can evoke certain feelings and suggest certain ideas through action, dialogue, and description, and interesting vocabulary. All right. My next sentence here: as his vision hazed. So his vision got blurry, but I like the word hazed. The vile papers blurred into a sea of white. Yeah? As his vision hazed, so we can see the exhaustion, the fatigue taking over Marlon. His vision is getting blurry. In the movies, sometimes they say like the screen just fade to black or fade to white. That is the image I am evoking here. His vision hazed on all of these vile papers. I said the papers are vile. More personification, saying, really indicating that Marlon is fed up with the bills, right? And all of these papers just turned into a sea of white, also indicating how Marlon is giving up, right? I'm going to add a new paragraph here. Action time. Marlon jolted up, to jolt up, to spring into action. Instead of Marlon got up suddenly. Yeah, I use a word that indicate that. Marlon jolted up. His eyes darting around. Marlon jolted up. His eyes darting around the room. Hard bangs shook the frail door. Let's say shook the frail floor and almost broke the door down. What do we think is happening here? Yeah. So we see that Marlon has probably fallen asleep. He comes home from work, takes off his tie, stresses over the bills, which he does all the time. And now he jolts up. Bam! So I have a contrast happening. We go from this melancholic feeling to a sudden burst of action. Right? He jolted up. So pay attention to such vocabulary that you can use in your stories. His eyes darting around the room. So he's panicking. Hey, what's going on? What's going on? Hard bangs shook the frail floor. Why is the floor frail? Because he's in an old place and I want to keep hammering that home. He's in an old apartment and almost broke the door down. Right? So Mikai can imagine what's happening. This must be the landlord coming to collect his rent, right? So I am setting up the scene. I am getting Marlon in this mood of panic and confusion, so the reader can be anticipating something. The reader doesn't know who is banging or what they want, but they know it's not going to be pretty. They know it's not going to be a friendly conversation. All right. So now I'm going to introduce some dialogue. Whenever you introduce, okay, let me talk about dialogue for a moment. Dialogue punctuation. Let me zoom in here. Whenever you introduce a line of dialogue, so whenever a new person is speaking, you enter a new paragraph. No matter what, you enter a new paragraph. So here, Marlon is speaking to himself. I enter a new paragraph. This may as well be a noose around my neck. At the end of the piece of dialogue, you punctuate within the quotation marks. Here I have a comma. And then I end here and I finish up the dialogue with he said or something like that. So that's how you write dialogue. You enter a new paragraph, you open your quotations, you punctuate within the quotation mark. Okay, good. As we go through more grammatical points, I'll explain. Who is it? Who's there? Marlon called out. But before getting a response, his eyes reached the clock. The only thing in the apartment that actually worked. This can't be. All right, let's say this can't be happening. When did I even fall asleep? He danced madly about the apartment, flinging his arms through yesterday's sweat tinted shirt and hauling the red noose about his neck. All right, guys. Yes, a new line for dialogue. So, what do you think is happening here? What am I doing here? And why am I doing it in the story? So, first we have a knock at the door, right? Someone, not just a knock, a bang at the door. And Marlon is panicking. Who is it? Who is it? But before he gets a response, he looks at the clock and realizes he's late for work. And so he starts panicking. This can't be happening. When did I fall asleep? He dances madly about the apartment and puts on his clothes. Why am I doing this? Didn't I just introduce some dialogue? So why don't I just allow this conversation to happen? Why am I adding a new problem now of him being late for work? Why do you think I'm adding two problems into the mix at once? Somebody at the door banging it down, plus a late for work. What is my aim here? Adding in multiple problems for the reader to keep track of at the same time. Why am I doing this? We see rising action. Okay. J Daddy, I'm showing you my story and explaining as I go. Yeah, rising action. Any other ideas as to why? To give a mode of hastiness. Yeah. Hastiness, panic, confusion, build tension. This is really my aim. All of you are right, but this is my critical aim right now. The dramatic effect to build tension. So in your story, there's no rule that says as soon as I introduce a little problem, you have to solve it and get rid of it. Problems can compile and add up. Something bad happens, and they're running away. They're in the car trying to escape. A tire is punctured, and while the tire is punctured, they go to fix it. Rain starts pouring down, right? And then they take out the phone to call the police. Battery dies. So you add problem on top of problem, and this builds tension, and this gets the reader wondering, how is he going to get out of this situation, right? That is what we're doing here. And that is why instead of just having the landlord come in and talk, I add another problem into the mix, which is this man is late for work and knows he's going to lose his job, right? So that's the idea. You can compound problems. Yeah, compound problems. I'm going to enter a new paragraph here. Go back to the old problem. Oh my, wrong pen. The banging sounded again. Marlon shoved the door open. Notice all of the action words. Nobody's doing anything gently or slowly. Shoved. He shoved the door open, just as he roughly took off the tie. Right? Because I'm maintaining this mood of anxiousness and panic and stress and frustration. So all of the actions are going to reflect that mood. How strange would it be if I said Marlon gently opened the door? Right? So Marlon shoved the door open. What do you guys think is going to happen next when he opens this door? Hmm? But what greeted him, using the word greeted a little bit ironically, but what greeted him was what? Was a fistful of rage. He'll kiss the landlord's fist. I like this expression, but I said what greeted him was a fistful of rage. No, he isn't there just waiting. We need some action. No, his fist is there waiting. Give me my money. So he gets up late, panicking, putting on his clothes, opens the door, bam, the action comes in. What greeted him was a fistful of rage. How does Marlon react to this? Marlon staggered back, right? And hit the floor. Staggered back and hit the floor. His breath shocked out of him. He staggered back and hit the floor. His breath shocked out of him. Dialogue, so new paragraph. I want my rent. And the giant coughed at him. Yeah? So note how I am describing the landlord, the giant. I'm not describing him as just a landlord because he would seem to be like an awful giant compared to Marlon. And maybe I'm describing his physical features. Maybe he's physically big compared to Marlon. In the picture we got, Marlon looked like a skinny guy. I want my rent. The giant coughed at him. Notice I didn't just say the landlord said. Even in the dialogue, I am still adding in description. Coughed at him. Imagine someone coughing out words at you. Yeah, it's not a nice experience to be on the receiving end of words being coughed at you. Right? And he continues speaking. Isn't the landlord a female? Who said the landlord was a female? You're 3 months late. Yeah? I want my rent. The landlord coughed at him. You're 3 months late. And then new paragraph. New paragraph because we're dealing with a new perspective now, going back to Marlon. Marlon got up, shaking. Welcome, CSEC Panda. Marlon got up, shaking. And because we started the paragraph with Marlon, we are able to continue with the dialogue from Marlon. You'll get it today, he said. And we're going to describe how Marlon is saying it. And Marlon is going to say it meekly because he's embarrassed and weak in the face of this landlord and his big raging fist. You'll get it today, he said meekly. Yet, wriggling his shoes on. Because remember, he's still trying to get ready for work. Yeah, I could use barked or bellowed. Yeah, so I can say instead of coughed at him, I could say barked or bellowed. Yeah, you'll get it today, Marlon said meekly. And instead of said, I could even use a word like he whispered or something that indicates that Marlon is in a position of fear at this point, right? Anyway, wriggling his shoes on. And he's continuing to speak. Please, I'm late for work. If I lose my job, you won't get your rent. Please, I'm late for work. If I lose my job, you won't get your rent. I'm going to add in a little bit of description and action now. The wiry man. Marlon is wiry because he's skinny. And at this point, he's also weak. The wiry man slipped past the landlord and took off, straightening his tie. Yeah? He took off, straightening his tie, we can say, as he ran. Yeah? Straightening his tie as he ran. And while he's running, the landlord is still speaking behind him. My rent. And I'm going to use all caps. Tonight. He heard the landlord rage behind him. Yeah. So the conflict of the story is fully developed now. This landlord needs his rent and he's not playing around. He's not messing around. Marlon needs to get this man's money. And note, I am being consistent in how I am describing the characters. The landlord is this big giant guy who is, coming at Marlon for his money. Marlon is weak, stressed out, nervous. He's skinny, he's wiry, he's wriggling on his shoes, he's running away from the landlord. And so we have this setup of like the underdog where the reader just wants Marlon to somehow find a way to overcome the landlord or pay his rent, right? So I'm trying to get the reader interested and invested in the characters, especially in Marlon. Yeah? Enjoying the story so far? What about the action, dialogue, and description? Are they effective? Are you seeing the effects? Are you seeing what I'm doing? I'm halfway through the story now. I'm halfway through the story. So looking at the plan, in the exam, I would be looking at the plan as I write, right? Looking at the plan, I'm keeping track of the conflict. Marlon, this man needs money urgently because he needs to pay his landlord. I have finished up the beginning. I've finished up the part where the landlord punches him and Marlon is late for work. I've finished up that part. So I have one more piece of the puzzle for the beginning, for the middle part. He helps an old lady in the street. So now I need to focus on getting Marlon into the street, helping an old woman. So I need to maybe stop and think for like a minute or a few seconds to come up with a situation that could really happen. So Marlon is now running out of his apartment, escaping the landlord, late for work, panicking about rent, and I need him to somehow help an old woman. How do I connect these two things? That's what I need to think about now. Yeah. So, oh boy, wrong pen. As Marlon, word limit it says 400 to 450 words. And the story I'm writing is within that limit or maybe a little bit over 450. So as Marlon threw his hand forward to stop a taxi, my handwriting is pretty big, so it might look like I'm taking up many pages. Yeah, if you're right, if your handwriting is not as messy as mine, then all of this might fit on one page so far. Yeah. And it's not just because I'm using this magic pen. I write ugly all the time, no matter what. So as Marlon threw his hand forward to stop a taxi, he noticed an elderly woman crouching down in the middle of the road, obstructing a black SUV. What do you mean, Sim? No, Panda. Panda, your writing is from heaven, man. From heaven. You say it's messy, but it's not. It's not at all. Uh Tashrina, I like this idea. The woman could be under some kind of pressure from some dogs or something like that. And Marlon saves the day. So whatever scenario I'm coming up with, I've already thought about it, as I've said. I'm not pulling all of this out, on the spot. I've thought about this before. But I need to come up with a scenario in which Marlon is going to help this woman, right? So she's crouched down in the middle of the road, obstructing a black SUV. The driver slammed his horn obnoxiously. Yeah, note I'm using some nice words. But the old woman could barely move. All right, so we see what the situation is, and we can predict what's going to happen next. This Marlon is on his way to work. He's stopping a taxi, and he notices an old woman crouching down in the street, blocking an SUV. Yeah. So now the driver is going to come into play. Because the driver is going to speak, we need a new paragraph. Get out of the road, the driver yelled. Yeah, get out. And I can say outer, even though it's not proper English because I'm using dialogue. I would never use this in description. In dialogue, you can do whatever you want, but not outside of dialogue. Get out of the road, the driver yelled. New speaker, new paragraph. So even if there's only one paragraph of speech, if a new speaker comes in, you have to get a new paragraph. Hey, if you were typing, then you would likely skip a line each time a new paragraph happens. But you can just indent for CSEC. Hey, respect your elders, man. Marlon said. And shuffled over to the woman. All right, so Marlon is coming to save the day. The driver is going to respond, so I indent again. What you say, boy? It's not grammatically perfect, but it's dialogue, so it doesn't matter. I'm trying to make the dialogue realistic. No one involved in road rage is using perfect grammar. Anyway, what you say, boy? Uh, you know who you're dealing with? This says 20 marks, but it's not real. It should be 20, 25 marks. I had to mess around with the page to get some things in order. What you say, boy? You know who you're dealing with? So this guy is kind of threatening Marlon, I guess. What is Marlon going to do? Changing perspective to Marlon, so new paragraph again. Marlon ignored the driver and reached down, need to add in some description, to the jittering woman. Why is the woman jittering? She's old, she's shaking, and I want to paint the picture of a woman who needs to be rescued, right? The jittering woman. He gently, and this is the first gentle thing that has happened in this story, he gently took her across the road. All right. So basically, I have completed the middle of my story. He helps an old lady across the street. All right. So Marlon is in his apartment stressing. That's done. The landlord threatens him. That's done. He is late for work. That's done. He helps an old woman in the street. The last thing that needs to happen, this old lady needs to turn out to be the landlord's mother, and she needs to be the one to forgive his rent and give him a job and turn his life around, all because of this kind act. Right? It's a simple plot. You might say it's cliche. I'm not sure if it is, but for CSEC, there you can't go in there and do anything crazy anyway. All right. So he gently took her across the road. Now we have a new speaker here. Mama, what do you think is speaking? What you doing outside? Let's say, what you doing out of the house? Yeah, Mama, what you doing out of the house? What do you think is speaking? I want to build some suspense, so I won't just say the landlord said. I'm gonna find another way to wrap up this dialogue sentence. Yeah, a familiar voice called out. So maybe the reader can anticipate that this is the landlord. Maybe they haven't caught on, they haven't gotten the gist of it yet. But I'm stretching it out a little bit before mentioning that it's the landlord to build anticipation, right? Mama, what you doing out of the house? A familiar voice called out. Getting the attention of Marlon and the woman, and the old woman. And then the woman is going to speak. So a new paragraph. Son, this makes it obvious that the person who called out is the mother's, the woman's son. Son, this nice young man just saved me from a wicked man in a black car. Yeah. The woman, I'll use the word reported. You don't have to use said. You can use various speech verbs to that match the situation, that match how a person is speaking. So the woman is kind of giving a report on what happened. So son, this nice young man just saved me from a wicked black man in a black car. The woman reported. Yeah. So she's saying, this man just saved me. Can do some more description. Her voice quivering as vigorously as her hands. So I'm building on descriptions. I said that she was a jittering woman earlier on. I used jittering somewhere. This old woman, I'm building on descriptions, right? Elderly woman crouching down in the middle of the road. The old woman could barely move. Jittering woman. So I'm continuing that description. So the image that I've set up for the woman, the reader can continue visualizing that same woman. The woman can't just jump up quickly and be alert all of a sudden, right? It's the same woman. So her voice is quivering as vigorously as her hands. So maybe she's nervous, or maybe she's just always shaking. Yeah. And didn't you say he has a job? Yes, he has a job. He's on his way to work. You're not following the story? Marlon is on his way to work and now he stops to help this old woman. And he's even later now. He gets involved with this woman and the man in the black car. And now somebody is calling out to the woman that he has just saved. And this is where things are going to come full circle. And I'm getting into the ending of my story. All right. What you doing out of the house? So Marlon recognizes the person now. Landlord, Marlon said with a gasp. He's frightened that this is the landlord. And the landlord is just now recognizing him as well. Marlon, they're recognizing each other. You know that moment in those shows where two characters finally, their eyes make for they recognize each other. And you have that epic moment of recognition. That's what's happening here. Landlord, Marlon said with a gasp. Marlon, new paragraph again. What a small world. Who do you think is speaking? The woman exclaimed. Right? She's surprised that this random man who saved her happened to be a tenant of her son. So, what a small world. And then she says something. As long as I walk and talk, a more interesting way of saying, as long as I live, as long as I walk and talk, this man must not pay another month's rent. And we're not even done yet. Put him in the best apartment we have. Wow, Marlon life is set up right now. Put him in the best apartment we have. How do you think the landlord is going to respond? What can you say to his own mother? Yes, mama. Yes, mama, the landlord said. But guess what? He isn't very happy about this, scowling. He's kind of vexed that Marlon gets to escape after he was, you know, trying to be a badass, beat him up, punch him in the face. And all of a sudden, he has to put Marlon in the nicest house and let him live rent free. Yes, mama, the landlord said, scowling. But guess what? I have a twist coming. What does the landlord say next? Your place, your rules. So all this big talk this landlord have is it's not even his place. Your place, your rules. We're gonna switch to Marlon, so we jump to a new paragraph. Marlon's eyes bulged. We need a reaction from Marlon. Marlon isn't just gonna, ignore what's happening. What? Are you joking? But guess what? The old woman isn't done yet because according to my plan, Marlon is gonna get a good job out of this whole situation. So we're not even done. Marlon's life is gonna change for the better. We need change in this story. We need change. Uh, Amran says flabbergasted. That's a nice word you could put here. Marlon was flabbergasted. So, but instead of saying he was flabbergasted, I wanted to show it. And so I mentioned that his eyes bulged. So the reader can then infer that he is flabbergasted. Marlon's eyes bulged. What? Are you joking? And the old man is going to continue speaking. And we need one more property manager. Hey, hey, Marlon, big. She continued. Have to make it clear who is speaking. So I said she continued. His tie looks good. Ironic that the same noose around his neck becomes something that looks good on him. His tie looks good. Bring him in. Imagine that. The same tie that he wanted to use to hang himself is what gets him this job, right? It's not really the tie, of course. It's the kind act that he did. So this woman says, "All right, move him into the nicest place we have, and plus he's gonna live rent free. Plus we need another property manager. So bring him in, give him the job without checking our resume, without knowing anything, any background on Marlon. This old woman just wants to, you know, return the favor to this young man." And we're gonna end with a piece of dialogue from the landlord. "Your business, your rules, mama." And my story ends there. This is around 450, maybe 480 words. Yeah. So before we do a final analysis of this story and the different sentence types and grammar structures, what do you think? What is your general impression of the story? I get the panda approval, so it must be great. Yeah, looks good. What is a real good? Yeah, you love it. And it's not a complex story, is it? It's not a complicated story. And I didn't have to think about exposition, rising action, climax. All of those things fell into place because of the planning I did. So if you plan this story beforehand, you can spend time working on the actual expression. How do you express the thoughts? Because I already know what thoughts you want to express. Yeah. Marlon, get through. Yeah, Marlon, get through. Get through, boy. Marlon got through all the way through. Yeah. And so let's look again at the four C's to see if we have everything in place, because we're going to use the four C's as like a checklist as we write to make sure that we are giving CSEC a proper and a well balanced and a fulsome story. Characters, we have a character in the story, good. Conflict, we did explore the conflict of Marlon needing to pay this man rent because he's getting punched in the face, and maybe next is going to be a bullet in the leg, right? Who knows? We see a change because Marlon, his whole life changes. He can now live rent free. He no longer has to worry and stress about a job or living in a old stinky place. And the context is there. The story happens at Marlon's house and in the streets, just those two places. Plot outline, we go from beginning to end. Marlon stresses about money, then the landlord threatens him, then he's late for work, then he helps the old woman, and then the old woman turns out to be the owner of the rental place, and the old woman sets him up for life. Dean Smith says, "Can you give us an next plan, please, like the page you used to plan, but you won't write the story?" Well, why don't you screenshot my plan, right? I won't do all the work for you now. Why don't you screenshot my plan and then apply the same plan to a past paper question? Just ensure that the plan fits the question, right? So the character is gonna, it has to fit whatever prompt, whatever stimulus you have chosen. The conflict has to make sense and so on. Just use the outline. I don't have to give you any more plans. All you need is the plan outline, the plan structure, and you can generate infinite plans. Yeah. The only thing I wanted was to name the landlord something like Maurice. Right at the end where mom says, "Bring him in." Okay. Oh yeah. A little humor point there, yeah. So does it have a point where someone would overdo description? I don't think you can overdo it, But what I would say is ensure that, well, you can't overdo it if there's no balance. Because remember, we're doing ADD. Or if DAD, that is easier to remember, then use that. So you need the rich description, but ensure that while you're giving the rich description, you have dialogue happening, you have action happening. So if you have lots of action, dialogue, and description, you're good. Yeah. Interesting yet simple. Yeah, it's simple. It's not a complicated story. It's not a complicated story. It's a pretty simple story in terms of the events. This guy needs to pay his rent. He's stressed out, and so he's on his way to work. He meets a woman, helps her. Oh, ta-da! I am the one who owns the place. Free job and free apartment for life, kind of thing. It sounds like a gimmicky story that a child could come up with, but CSEC isn't testing your idea to generate brilliant story ideas. This isn't a story test. It's not a literature exam, is it? CSEC is testing your idea to, sorry, testing your ability to communicate the ideas, to express the ideas, and to within the time constraints, come up with a story plot, come up with a plan. It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need to be using cliffhangers and flashbacks and foreshadowing and all these things. Find a simple idea and tell that simple story well. Focus your energy on writing well. Don't focus your energy on finding the most out of the box idea. CSEC Panda has a good story on her channel. Very, very simple story. I think it was somewhat a little boy's first day of school. Very, very, very simple. Very, very simple conflict. The internal conflict, this mother stressing about how the son is gonna or should be worried. And basically the result, the change is that the mother realizes how strong the son is and that he's not worried about anything. So your story doesn't have to be complicated. Yeah. Yeah, not it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be complex at all. And that is why I don't even teach the whole plot arc with exposition, rising action, climax, and all that. I just say have a beginning, have a middle, have an end, and have things make sense. Right? The more important thing is that your story flows logically and they have a good mix of action, description, and dialogue, and you are using interesting vocabulary. And you could start with the conflict, Pinky. Right? I could start this story with Marlon being punched in the face, but then I'd have to backtrack a little bit to add the context of him being poor and so on. So you can start with the conflict. You can even start in the height of the thing. You can start at the climax and then kind of work your way around it, explaining and building up what happens. But my advice is take the simple way out, beginning in the beginning, the middle in the middle, the end in the end, right? Nothing fancy, nothing fancy. Listen, CSEC cannot come hard. There's no such thing as a hard exam. There's a prepared student and an unprepared student. That's the only distinction. No paper is hard. No paper is easy. It's just about how prepared you are to tackle each section. Yeah, as Panda is saying, you can't write the next blockbuster, the next bestseller in 45 minutes. You can't do that. What you have to do is come up with a simple idea, because remember, you're going to spend 15 minutes planning. You're not spending 30 minutes planning. So come up with an idea that you can flesh out in 15 minutes. And then spend the majority of the time, which is 25 minutes, actually writing well. It's not about your great ideas or your fancy ideas or your unique story ideas. It's about how well you're able to write. So don't get it twisted. CSEC isn't looking for writers for their magazines. What they're looking for is your ability to write a simple, well organized, coherent story grammatically. Yeah, let me take my face off and let you see what's going on again. For the latecomers, for those who can't even find a seat around the back because you came so late, this is the picture we worked with. Yeah, this picture here, and this is the plan. This is your final chance to get a snapshot of this plan. So plan, get the 4 C's down, get your plot outline, your beginning, middle, end. And then in the writing section, focus on ADD, action, dialogue, description. And then you review your story by checking spelling, capitalization, punctuation, tense, word count. Ensure that you have worked this stimulus into the story well. Ensure that your story is grammatically correct and there are no errors. If it's blurry demoya, ensure that you turn up the quality on your device. I am streaming in 1080p full HD, so it shouldn't be blurry. Click the little gear icon and then click 1080p. And then it will become very clear. All right. I'm telling you guys, if you can't see, you just need to increase the quality. What do you mean if points aren't awarded for creativity? Isn't my story creative? Be creative in how you tell the story. That's what I'm saying. Be creative in how you express your thoughts and ideas. You don't have to be creative in the ideas themselves. Be creative in the sentence, in the sentencing, the sentence structures, the vocabulary, the diction, the imagery. That's where you need to focus your creativity. It's not about finding the most shocking plot that anybody can think of. Nobody cares about that. They're testing your writing skills, not your idea skills, your writing skills. Right? If you have a great idea, fine, no problem. But don't spend 20 minutes trying to find the best idea. Spend the time writing a story well. I can't stress that enough. Yeah. I think I've probably touched on everything I need to touch on in terms of technique. I've touched on the action, dialogue, description, and I narrated my thoughts as I went. So I think we can call it a day for this story. There's no need to reread the whole thing, right? Is anybody late? Should I read the whole story so I get a full picture of what's happening? Or can we skip over that? Let me know in the chats. You want me to read the whole thing so you see how it comes together and how it sounds as a whole? Because we've been looking at it piece by piece. Yeah, thank you, Panda. All due to the planning. And in every section, you need to plan. The messier your paper looks, the uglier your paper is, the more thought you're putting into your exam. Mark up your page, use up the planning sections. All right, everybody's saying yes. So you can use transitional words, but not like when writing an essay. The transitional words are mainly going to be sequencing words, getting into what happened next and or what happened before. You won't need like therefore and however and stuff like that. Not for the story. All right, let me read the whole thing once, and then I'll end the stream if I think this is good enough, or we'll take a short break and then touch on one more question. All right, let me read it, depending on how I feel after reading this. All right, let's go. The stained wooden chair creaked beneath Marlon as he sank into it. He oozed out a lifeless sigh, and then another. The bills and notices had outgrown their station on the table and were now littered about the cramped apartment. His fingers, just by reflex, sifted through the letters and envelopes as he loosened his red tie roughly. This may as well be a noose around my neck, he said under his breath, and tossed his tie behind him. As his vision hazed, the vile papers blurred into a sea of white. Marlon jolted up, his eyes darting around the room. Hard bangs shook the frail floor and almost broke the door down. Who is it? Who's there? Marlon called out. But before getting a response, his eye reached the clock, the only thing in the apartment that actually worked. This can't be happening. When did I even fall asleep? He danced madly about the apartment, flinging his arms into yesterday's sweat tinted shirt and hauling the red noose about his neck. The banging sounded again. Marlon shoved the door open, but what greeted him was a fistful of rage. Marlon staggered back and hit the floor, his breath shocked out of him. I want my rent, the giant coughed at him. You're 3 months late. Marlon got up, shaking. You'll get it today, he said meekly, wriggling his shoes on. Please, I'm late for work. If I lose my job, you won't get your rent. The wiry man slipped past the landlord and took off, straightening his tie as he ran. My rent? Tonight? He heard the landlord rage behind him. As Marlon threw his hand forward to stop a taxi, he noticed an elderly woman crouching down in the middle of the road, obstructing a black SUV. The driver slammed his horn obnoxiously, but the old woman could barely move. Get out of the road, the driver yelled. Hey, respect your elders, man, Marlon said, and shuffled over to the woman. What you say, boy? You know who you're dealing with? Marlon ignored the driver and reached down to the jittering woman. He gently took her across the road. Mama, what you doing outside the house? A familiar voice called out, getting the attention of Marlon and the old woman. Son, this nice young man just saved me from a wicked man in a black car, the woman reported, her voice quivering as vigorously as her hands. Landlord, Marlon said with a gasp. Marlon? What a small world, the woman exclaimed. As long as I walk and talk, this man must never pay another month's rent and put him in the best apartment we have. Yes, Mama, the landlord said, scowling. Your place, your rules. Marlon's eyes bulged. What? Are you joking? And we need one more property manager, she continued. His style looks good. Bring him in. Your business, your rules, Mama. Yeah, so that's my story for this paper. May, June 2018. Yes, I did my best with the voices now. All right. So take some tips, take whatever advice you need, and make sure if you don't want to use my plan exactly as it is, you can tailor it or tweak it or take whatever works from it, whatever works for you from it. Yeah. All right. There's one more paper that we can take a look at, but it's been 2 hours, 18 minutes. I'm not doing another 5 hour stream, It's not happening. It's not happening at all. I'm wondering if I could check some stories that you guys have. I have another paper here, but guess what? Guess what? I'm not gonna show you another of my stories because the story is different, of course. The plot is different, but the technique, the general technique is the same. So I don't want to teach the same thing twice. So what I'll do instead is I'll ask you guys a question. Depending on the answer, we'll either end the stream or press on. Do you guys have any short stories that you have written that you would want me to check right now on stream and give you some feedback on? That is my question. Do you have any short stories that you are confident in? Any past paper short stories? I might look at 2 or 3 and provide some feedback. All right, I see yes. Some say not really. What I did last time is I gave you some time to do a past paper question, but I'm not sure if we want to spend that much time on the stream. Do you want me to give you some time to do a particular past paper story and then I check it? But it's gonna take time. We'd have to take a long break. What do you mean it's not easy? Tell me what is not easy, Ingrid. What is not easy? Because I've given you a very easy plan to follow. Easy plan. And if you follow that easy plan, you can write a good story. It's not a problem, Jody. I don't mind the time, you know. I don't want to exhaust you guys. I'm more worried about you because I can do this all day and all night. I can do this all day, all night. Trust me. All right, let me bring up. We're on fire, sir. All right, so let me bring up. This is 500 words. I don't think I don't think this is 500 words. This is 400. It might be over 450, but it's not 500. 400 and something words. 3 pages of big penmanship. Not quite 500 words. Blame CXC. No man, don't be scared. Don't be scared. What you need to do is prepare. The more you prepare, the more the fear goes away. That fear that you're feeling, it's likely coming from a place of uncertainty. See, uncertainty creates anxiety. So when you're unsure of something, you're afraid. But if you know you have the past paper, so you know what you're getting into, you know what types of question to expect. Plan for each question type and it should be good. What are you talking about? All right, I'm gonna studying. I'm wondering what to do here. I'm wondering if I should assign a question and then do a part two stream where I just check stories. They say approximately 400 to 450. So I think if you're close to that range, like if you're over or under by say 20 words, I don't think you'll be marked down for that. If you're over or under by like 50 or 100 words, it might be a problem, especially if you're under. Better to be over than to be under when it comes to the short story. English B streams, you know, I'm never sure now. When do you have English B? Is it the 12th? May 12th? Is it May 12th? Demoy says yes. I'm not sure if it's May 12th. I have one English B stream that I am sure to do. Do you guys should know Jermaine Hutton if you're following up with English B material on YouTube. I'm gonna do a live with him on Sunday, and that's gonna be on Animal Farm. I haven't announced that video yet, so you guys are the first to know. I'm gonna do an Animal Farm live, and I also want to do a 12th night live at some point because I've never produced any content on 12th night. I am not doing anything on the poems at all. I'm not even looking in the direction of the poems. I have about 50 poem videos. So go and watch all of them. For the poems, I have one analysis video per poem, And then I have at least one discussion video per poem. And I have lots of videos covering all 20 poems. So I'm done with poetry. I've done a complete course on Anansi. So I'm not doing, and I've done a live on Anansi. So I'm not doing any Anansi stuff. I've recently covered For the Life of Letitia in a 4-part course. So I'm not touching that anymore. Watch the videos. I want to do Animal Farm on 12th night. So I'm half promising to do those 2 lives. The Animal Farm is coming for sure. I hope to do 12th night. Yeah. Why am I talking about English B? Why am I talking about English B? This is an English A live. Come on. All right. So guess what? We're gonna wrap this up. And what I want to do is I would like to do a follow-up story live where I can check your stories, but I am not promising you. I'm not promising you. But if we ever get around to doing another story live, I would like you guys to work on the same paper in that case. What paper would I want you to work on? Let me check something. And even if we don't get a chance to do that live, it's not a loss because you still get some practice. January 2022. So do a story question on this, and if I get the chance, I will do another live where I check your stories. Right? Is that clear? Do the January 2022 story. Even if we don't get to do the live, you're still getting practice in. But if we get to do the live early next week, hopefully, maybe at least you will have something that you can submit and we can check it on stream. Yeah. But for now, I'm going to call it that for this stream, because if I wait until you guys write a story, no, that's going to be another hour to get that sorted out. And you guys can use that time to work on the story, and then maybe I can check it. Some of you guys have emailed me your expository piece from the last live, and I haven't gotten to them. I will likely not be able to touch them or look at them. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. It's a super, super, super busy time, and I just won't get the time to reply to those and provide feedback on those. I could only touch on those that I touched on during the live. The others, just consider it writing practice. I won't be able to provide feedback. But if you get the story done and I get to do another story live, then I can touch on your stories in the live, hopefully. Yeah. Yeah. And same to you, Panda. You guys should also check out, although I'm sure most of you know Panda anyway. Check out Panda's English A paper 2 videos. Yeah, really good writing samples, good techniques. Any paper 3, I'm very sorry. I'm not very familiar with paper 3, Tyreek. Sorry about that. I've never really looked at a paper 3. Yeah. Vin A, I'm not a student, therefore have to give me more details about what, Vin A. What do you mean? What are you talking about? What details? Details about what? All right, well, Vinay responds, yeah, Panda is a real G. Panda and I did a little collab at one point, but it wasn't on stream. It's not a public collab. Yeah, man, Panda is awesome. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, so maybe can you access the past paper, January 2022? I'm saying if I get the chance to do another story stream, I'd look at that particular story so we can all be looking at the same paper. It's January 2022, the story question. Yeah, Tarek, check out Panda's channel for the paper 3 video. Panda has a paper 3 video, so check that out. I'm not familiar with paper 3, and I can't get familiar with it in time to help you. So check out Panda's video. Yeah. You teach any subs besides English A and B. But technically I don't teach English A or B. I teach English conversation and grammar here in Japan. But I do English A and B on YouTube because I have a passion for that. And no one then I might do like sessions and lectures and classes and stuff like that. But I'm not teaching English A and B like in a school as a regular teacher. I'm just a YouTube teacher. Yeah, check it out. Or send me an email, Vinny. You can find my email address on my channel. Send me an email. I'll hook you up. Can you add his name? Whose name? Not sure what you're talking about. Are you talking about CSEC Panda? Just type CSEC Panda in YouTube. Her channel comes up. That's it. Just type CSEC Panda. It comes up. Yeah, I live in Japan. It's almost midnight now for me. Yeah. So just type CSEC Panda. She's been in the chat. Where have you been, Vin A? That's cool. Not really cool. It's very hot these days. Actually, it's approaching summer now. It's technically spring, but it's approaching summer. I live in the hottest city in Japan. Oof, it's not pretty right now. All right, guess what? Let's not drag this on, guys. Thanks for coming out. So if we have a short story ready, how do we send it to you? Well, if I get the chance to do a follow-up live for short story, at that point I will take the stories. So I might not be able to check a story, but even if I can't check a story, just get the practice anyway, right? There's no hurt. There's no hurt in doing more practice anyway. All right. So yeah, guys, take care. The next live session is going to be Monday morning, Monday 7 a.m. Jamaica time. And we're going to be touching on section D of the paper. So argumentative / persuasive writing. So don't miss out on that section, on that live. Japan is quite cold in winter and it's slightly cold in autumn. The interesting thing about Japan is the seasons are very, very distinct. So you really feel 4 different temperatures throughout the year. Back in Jamaica, it's kind of always hot. It gets a little chilly in like winter. There's no real winter. Jamaica has 2 seasons, sunny and rainy. But in Japan, each season really comes with, distinct temperatures and different humidity levels and stuff like that. So the winters here are very cold and very dry. Your skin dries out. If you're as dark as I am, you have to lotion yourself 10 times a day. The summers are hot and humid. Oh my gosh, the summers are... Spring and autumn are the best seasons. I'm not doing any live tomorrow. My next live is Monday morning, 7 a.m. Jamaica time. We'll look at section D. So I've already looked at sections A, B, and C. Check out those lives if you missed sections A and B. And if you came to this live late, you'll be able to see the live up on YouTube in a few hours when it processes. Yeah. And I don't have a lot of English A content. I have a lot of English B content. But for English A, paper 1, I have lots of paper 1 stuff. I can check those out. CSEC Panda has lots of paper 2 videos. Right. All right, guys. Yeah, there's a lot of snow here. But in my city, it doesn't snow very much. All right, guys, take it easy. I'm signing off now. I'll see you in the community tab and in the comment section and stuff like that. And if not, I'll see you Monday morning, bright and early. All right, take it easy.